Okay, today's daf is daf Chaf Beis in Ksubas, as we learned for a four shleima for Yosef Azriel ben Chaim Michal and Elazar ben Ruma. It says the Mishnah, where we got to yesterday on Chaf Beis and Rav. This is a continuation of Pesha or Pesha Hitter. If I'm the one who forbids something, I can also permit it. A woman says, I used to be married, Ugrushani, but I'm divorced now. So in Emunas, she's believed, and you allow her to get remarried. You don't assume she's a Ashes ish and she's also pretty get married. She says, we didn't know she was married. She shows up in town and she says, I was once married, but I'm divorced. She believes obviously. So let's say there was proof, there was witnesses, there were two proper kosher witnesses that she's been married. And she says, and she says, I'm divorced, but she has no proof that she's divorced. She's not believing, we don't allow her to remarry. Omra Nishbasi, similarly, if a woman says, I was taken captive by the Goyim, but I was not violated, and therefore I'm still mutter to marry a Kohen, Ne'emanas, she's believed because we didn't know that she was taken into captivity. We only know it through her mouth. If there were witnesses that she was taken into captivity by the Goyim, she says, I wasn't violated, I'm still clean, I can marry a Kohen. And in Ne'emanas, she's not believed because the assumption is a presumption if she was taken into captivity by the Goyim that she was violated and she can no longer marry a Kohen. But let's say the Adam only came and testified that what? Either in the first case, we'll talk about that tomorrow, where the first case where she says she is divorced, there were Adam that she was married, or there were Adam that she was taken into captivity. If those Adam come after she's been remarried, she came and said, I was married and divorced, or I was taken to captivity and I wasn't violated, I can marry a Kohen. In the first case, the issue is, can she get remarried at all? In the second case, can she marry a Kohen? We said if there's Adam, then she's not believed. Unless she has proof that she was divorced or not violated. But let's say the Adam only came after she was married, then she doesn't have to believe the marriage. We'll talk about that in detail more tomorrow. We've talked about Peshas or Pesha in these last few Mishnayos. Where do we get it from? It says what happens? A man and woman get married, and he comes to court claiming that she must have committed adultery in the interim between time they were engaged and not, because I didn't find her to be a psula. And they come to court. And if he's lying, he has to pay $100. If it's truthful and it can be proof that she committed adultery, then she's a sota and she has to be punished. But when they come to court, the father says, "As biti nasati leisha," I have given my daughter to this man. He's empowered to do that. Leisha, as biti nasati leisha leisha. Number one, as biti nasati leisha, when he says that I've married, remember, a father can marry off his daughter until the age of 12 and a half. He's entitled to marry her off. She has no say in the matter. He can marry her off against her will because he's the one who has to agree. So when it says as ish, as soon as he says I've given my daughter over to a man, this is how they play games, and they're fighting over divorce, and he says I accepted kedushin for my 1-year-old daughter, and I'm not going to tell you who it is. If he does that, she can never get married because he doesn't know who it is. If a man is such a rasha, but the point is he's empowered to accept the kedushin. When he says it's beating the satil ish, as soon as ish, that means I've married her off to some Jewish man. He's forbidden her to marry anybody else. Asra, ish, asra. Hazeh, to this man, as soon as he says hazeh, this man, if he just says, I made her off to a man, and you didn't say she can't marry anybody because we don't know who the guy is. We don't know who her husband is. She can't marry anybody else. As soon as he says hazeh, he's matter her to marry this guy. So you see, ish. As soon as he says hazeh, mutter. So that's the point of peshas or peshiter. Leish answered to everybody. Hazeh is matter to this guy. Lamali crosses the Gemara. What did pasuk sfaru? This is a great line. Lamali cross. What do I need a pasuk for? It's a sfara, right? Who asra? Who sharila? What do I need a pasuk for? As soon as he says it's a sfara. If he asra, he could also be matter. He could take it away. Ella ki yitzrachro. We need a pasuk for a different drasha. But the point is, the Gemara accepts that. Why doesn't the Gemara say, well, I need a pasuk to make it doraisa? The answer is sfara is also doraisa. Like the Rashi says, there's many doraisas. Halacha Moshe Messina is doraisa. Zerushav is doraisa. Kavachomer is d'oraisa. A svara is also d'oraisa. Where do we have a similar thing like this, Michael? Where do we have a similar thing at the svaro? Svaro, when we say, we try to prove, how do we know that the three cardinal sins you must give up your life for, right? So one of them is murder. The Gemara brought proof for the other ones. The Gemara says, for murder, how do you know? How do you know that if you're told, kill him or we're going to kill you, that you must give up your life? Because it's a svaro. My chazis the samkadi the damadidach samkas fei. Why is your blood redder than his? In other words, why should you kill him? Maybe you should die. Who says it's a svara? That's also a d'oraisa. Here you see it too. Lamali cross sfari. What do I need a pasuk for? It's a svara. What do you mean it's a svara? I need a pasuk that means d'oraisa. The answer is no, svara is also d'oraisa. You see from here, it's a good proof. Ella ki yitzrachka likirafuna marav. You need a pasuk for Rafuna marav to Rosh. Why don't Rafuna marav? How do we know that a father can prohibit his daughter from marrying anybody else? I've given my daughter over to a man. Lisha said, I've given over to man. In other words, I'm empowered to do that. How do we know that the father's empowered to marry off his daughter up until the age of 12 and a half, and it's totally his decision? From this pasuk, he can ask her on anybody else by giving him to one guy. Hazel lamli. What do I need this pasuk hazel? Just say, I can give her over to whoever I want. What does it say? Lamli. Boy, look at the Tanur of Yonah. Tanur of Yonah learned this. Speaking what's the case? I just told you the case that's called Motzi Shemra. He says that she must have committed adultery. She's not a virgin. And she says, I'm still a virgin, or whatever. It argues this way. And the father says, I've given over to this man. It's this argument that if the husband turns out to be a liar, he has to pay the father $100. That's only Hazed, this man, but not the other. Let's say he dies now. Let's say this man died, whatever it was. She married a guy, and he died at the chuppah, and his brother had to perform Yibam. And then the Yavam says, I didn't find Psulim. And you go through this whole parsha. There, this parsha doesn't apply. It only applies to the man, not to his brother. Let's say a woman says, I'm married. And then she says, no, I'm not married. Can she take back her words? But, right, why did she say she's married? If she says, like in the case in the Mishnah, I used to be married, but I'm divorced. Okay, we accept that because we didn't know you were married. Or I was taken into captivity, but I wasn't violated. Okay, we didn't know you were taken into captivity, so we believe you. But over here, why did she say I was married? And then she says, I'm not married. She's believed. She's made herself forbidden. When she says I'm married, that means that she can't marry anybody else until she gets proof of divorce or death of the husband. Those are the only two ways to leave a marriage, death or divorce, right? Somebody's got to die or somebody's got to get divorced. She gave an excuse. A masla is like a plausible reason to explain why she originally said she was married. Why do people say you're married? When you try to get a shidduch today, these kids don't want to get married. You say, you have a girlfriend, I'm busy now. So they go, I'm busy. They're busy. They're all busy, right? She gave an excuse. Right? We have a brisa proving this. She says, I was married. I'm married now. Not Haisi, like in our Mishnah. I'm married now. Right now I'm married. This is not like the case of Mishnah. I was married and divorced. Here she says, I'm married now. 5 minutes later, she says, I'm not married. Depends who she's talking to. I'm single, and she's not believed. If she gave a reason explaining why she originally said she was married, here's a story confirming that where she had a good excuse. It was an adult woman. She was beautiful. Everybody was eager to marry her. She was a pretty girl, to marry her. And she said to me, I'm married. I'm already married. I'm betrothed. Right? She said that I'm betrothed already. A few days later, but she got married. She didn't get divorced in between. Nobody knew who her first husband was. Would you do this? You said you were married. Now you get married to somebody else. Originally, some unworthy men tried to court me. I wanted to fend them off. So I said, I'm sorry, I'm already spoken for. Here's my engagement ring. Now that some worthy men have approached me, I married one of them. Rav Acha was called Sarabira, the head of the capital, or the head of the palace. He brought this halacha up before the Chachamim, but Usha and Usha, where the Sanhedrin went after they were exiled. And they said, she's believed. She gave an excuse. That's a good excuse. In other words, this is not a case of Pesha or Pesha. She just says, because it's not like, it's not like I believe me when I said this, because I could have said this, right? She says, I'm married. 5 minutes later, the next day, she gets engaged with somebody else. What's going on over here? The answer is, she said she was married to fend off the other suitors. Let me know Shmuel Rav. Shmuel asks Kasha Rav, interesting thing. Amr Tmani. His wife says, I'm Anida. His wife says, I'm married, we can't have the Anida. B'chazra Amr Torah, and then she says, I'm not Anida. She didn't go to the mikveh in between. This took place without her apparently going to the mikveh. Now, what do you say there? Amr Lei. So Rav answers, Atbazu, also here, if she gave an excuse for her words, then she's believed. In other words, she might have just said, I wasn't, pardon?
I had a headache.
I had a headache, right? I had a headache. I wasn't in a good mood. So I said that I'm in Nida. But if you gave her a good excuse, she's believed. And the Shmuel said, learned it from Rav 40 times, he repeated it over. When Shmuel's own wife said that she's Tameh, he wouldn't have deal with her until she went to the mikvah. In other words, right? He wouldn't listen. That was a story. So if you give an excuse, that works. Okay. Back to our issue of what is the case where Ishi married Ishim. Pardon.
These cases, they get added on to the other cases where you're allowed to tell lies.
Yeah. You're not supposed to, but if she did it, we accept her reasoning. If she gives a plausible reason, that's accepted. It's also for peace. Like Aaron Cohen. He told a white lie to bring peace between people. He really wants to apologize, but he's embarrassed. And the other guy, tell him, please accept his apology. He's begging, and just putting them together. Then no such thing. You're allowed to do that for shalom bias or for shalom bein anoshim. Tanrabanan. Shnayim amar meis, shnayim amar meis. Two people come along and say the husband's dead. Two people say he's not. Or shnayim amar skash, shnayim amar skash. Or two people say he was divorced. They were divorced. Harei lo tinase. She shouldn't get remarried. Why? Because it's 2 against 2. We all agreed that she was married. Now, was she divorced or widowed or not? We don't know. So she married. In this is lo say. But if she got married already, she shouldn't go out because it's still 2 against 2. We don't know for sure that she's still married. There are 2 witnesses who say she was divorced or widowed. Rav Yossi Omer Tate said, no. If 2 people say that she's still married, she has to leave the wedding. If she got remarried, she has to leave that. When do I say Tate say? Bisman Shabo Adam Achachnissus. If Adam came and said she's still married, and then she got married, then I say leave the marriage. But if she first got married, based on the testimony of the ones who said her husband's dead or divorced, and then she got married based on that, and then Adam came afterwards, then she doesn't have to leave. So you want to understand here. I understand. How do you say that she can get married if she's married? Even Rav Yossi is also mad if she got married first, and then Adam came, she doesn't have to leave going. How could she not leave? It's 2 against 2. When she lives with this man now, when she gets married now, there's 2 people say she's widowed or divorced. 2 people say she's not. If you live with her now, you're not sure. It's 2 against 2. We can't resolve the matter, and therefore it's you're chayv noshim toli. You can't do it on purpose. You shouldn't live with her on purpose. And even b'shogeg, you're chayv noshim toli because maybe you sin, maybe you don't. About b'ashim toli, Rav Sheshes kagon shenis lachem edah. No. Ashim toli is when you're not sure if you committed a sin or not. For example, 2 pieces of meat, one was kosher, one was not kosher, one was chaylev, one was shuman. You don't know which one you ate, so you're not sure. So to resolve, to keep you from punishment until you find out, or until Yom Kippur, you bring an Ashim toli. It's only when you're not sure. But over here, the aid is sure. The aid says, I know he died or divorced her, so he married her, so he has no problem with Ashim toli. Amr Sheish is going to. So she married one of the Lechem Dad. So he grew for Basham Talikama. So the aide knows that he's dead. He's a witness. But how about her? She should have to bring Basham Tali. For any Aveir in the Torah, a woman has the same responsibility as a man in terms of punishment, in terms of atonement. He grew for Basham Talikama. Says, but Maris Barley, which she says, no, I'm also sure that he's dead. So that's why they don't have to bring carbon. So that's what we said so far. The Bryce said, makes no difference if the testimony, the 2 against 2 was divorced or widowed, either way, if she shouldn't get married. But if she got married, we don't force her to go out. That's the Bryce. Rabbi Yochanan says a little bit differently. Rabbi Yochanan, I agree in the case of death. If the 2 say she died, 2 say he died, and 2 say he didn't, she shouldn't get married. If she got married, she doesn't have to leave the new marriage. But if it was a case of gerushin, 2 people say she was divorced, she wasn't divorced. He disagrees with the brisa. He says if 2 against 2 in terms of a divorce, was it divorced or not, and she shouldn't get remarried, and if she did, she has to leave that. What's the difference if it's death or divorce? Why in the case of death do we say if she remarried, even though it's 2 against 2, she could stay there? If it's divorce, not. So here we have different opinions. Amar Abaye. Abaye, the first opinion says, Targuma be'ed echad. We're speaking about where there weren't 2 eidim. 1 aid said, what do we learn in Yavamas? What was one of the most important things to learn in Yavamas? That if 1 aid comes and says that her husband died, it's accepted because Isha Daika Mitzvah, she's going to check carefully. She doesn't want to wind up with the husband showing up after she's remarried. So she's going to check it out. So in the case of death, Eid Echad is good enough. Why? Talking about Eid Echad remains. The rabbis believe with Beit Trade. That's not at the Oraisa. Listen carefully to these words in the Gemara. And the Rabbanan believed them like 2. Remember when one person, an aide comes and says that her husband's dead, we believe him. The Rabbanan believe like 2. Ula wasn't talking about this case. We have this Ula many times. Just we have Yavamas and Sota. Where the Torah believed that Echad it's like 2. Now Ula was really speaking about wherever the Torah believed. What did the Torah believe 1 aid? Torah didn't believe 1 aid. Torah believes 1 aid in rare cases, but it's not Aedis. Says Rashi in Yavamas on Pei Chesem and Beis, Kol Makom She'emina Torah Eid Echad Ein Din Aedis B'Davar. It's not because of Aedis. You need witnesses. 2 witnesses, what you need. But there are cases where the Torah believed 1 person, but it's not the Torah's Aedis. It's not like he's coming to court, Eid Echad and Bisurin, or a case where a man gave kini and steer to his wife. He warned her, and she went into seclusion with him, and warned her against going to seclusion with the uncle. She went into seclusion with the uncle, and 1 aide comes along and says, "I saw them in the act." 1 aide. If 2 aidim come and saw them in the act, you take her out and kill her if there's aidim asra. But if 1 aide says, so the Gemara over there says she doesn't drink, no longer sota. That's a bade sota effectively. Can't kill her because only 1 aide. But 1 aide is that. So 1 aide does something, but it's not aedis. It's not aedis. Rashi over there says, Ein din aedis b'davar mid eid echad nemenba. Since 1 aide believed it's not aedis, because aedis means 2 witnesses, you have to have 2. There's the difference if you have apostle people like women or slaves who are also apostle for witnesses, where the Torah believes 1 person, it's not aedis. Women and slaves cannot be aedim. However, when the Torah believes 1, we go according to the majority of the opinion. It's no longer the case. If it's real aedis, trei kameya, 2 kosher witnesses are as good as 100 kosher witnesses who counteract them. But when it comes to cases where the Torah believes 1 aid for whatever reason it is, or the case of Sota or other cases, then he says, it's like 2. It's not really aedis, but it's like 2. So here he says also when the rabbi said that if 1 aid comes along and says that her husband's dead, and there's no way to prove it, but he says husband's dead, the rabbi said, you believe it because we know she's going to check it out, and it's like 2. That's what he means over here. Over here, 1 aid says the husband died, and it's so when the second guy comes along and says, no, he's not dead. In other words, what's the issue over here? Why, when it comes to death, we say if she got remarried based on the testimony, she doesn't have to leave that marriage. When it comes to gerushin, yes, because when it comes to death, when one person reports his death, that's like 2. So when the second guy comes along and said he's not dead, how do you come lomes? Avalechad is only 1. In other words, the first guy is believed like 2. It's not really 2 aedis, but the rabbis believe them just like the Torah believed 1 aid in certain cases. And if you believe him, it's like 2, and therefore it's 2 against 1, and therefore she could stay in the new marriage. However, when it comes to getting on, so if that's the case, if it's 2 against 1, why can't she go ahead and get remarried? We said if it's one witness says yes and one he's dead, and one witness says no, so she shouldn't get remarried. But if she did, it's she doesn't have to leave. Even she should be able to marry. This is Mishum Ravasi. The Ravasi pasuk and Mishas hasar mimcha just take away your crooked mouth, and keep far away when people murmurs of the people. In other words, don't have people talk about it. If there's some suspicion whether the husband's dead or not dead, don't get remarried. Wait till people will be talking. Did you hear she got remarried? Not so sure if her husband's dead. Boy, this is a real problem. Don't do lechachil. You shouldn't. But if she got married, we allow it. Seifa, in the Seifa by Gerushin, one person going said she's divorced, and one says she's not divorced. What are we talking about? A woman who was definitely married. They both agreed she was married. Was she divorced or not? Everybody agrees she's married. They're both saying she was married. And the one who says she's divorced, and therefore he's not believed. In other words, 2 people, one person says she's divorced, one people saying she's not divorced, but they're both testifying she was married. Yesterday she was married. So 2 people say she's married. How many people say she's not married, that she was divorced? Only one. And therefore, if she got remarried based on that one witness, she must leave the marriage. She must leave the new marriage. That's Abaya's answer. Even though the Brisa said, or Rabbi Yochanan said, Shnaim Omer Meis, Shnaim Omer Lo Meis. All right, so we're explaining now it's really only 8 echad, right? It's only really 8 echad. In the case of the Gerushin, you say Shnaim and Gerushin. Okay, it's really the words don't fit into that. Rabbi says, "Lo them trade." It is 2 against 2. But Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Menachem Bar Yossi Gerushin. When it comes to Gerushin, he agreed with Rabbi Menachem Bar Yossi, who said that if you got remarried before it could be proved, if you had 2 Adam said one way, 2 said the other way, and you got remarried after the Adam came and said that you shouldn't get remarried, you got remarried. Menachem Bar Yossi says you should leave that marriage, or he says you should leave the marriage. In both cases, Rabbi Bar Yossi said it in both cases, whether it's death or divorce. But Rabbi Yochanan agreed with Menachem Bar Yossi in case of Gerushin, and he didn't agree with him in the case of the death. In the case of the death, when it's 2 against 2, if she got remarried, she doesn't have to leave the marriage. In case of the Gerushin, at my time, listen carefully, it's a good svara. The reason when it's a case of death, why do we believe the Adam more if she got remarried? Because again, she's going to check it. Why? Because if the guy shows up, she can't say, "Hey, you're dead." Can she say, if her husband shows up, can she say, "Hey, you're supposed to be dead"? It's not going to help her now. So she'll be more careful before she gets remarried. So if she got remarried based on that, we allow it. Gerushin, but if Gerushin, if he shows up, she could say, "You divorced me. You can divorce me." So she might be able to say divorce. So therefore, we say you got to check things out carefully. If it's 2 against 2, we don't allow her to get remarried. Why? Because she can get remarried even though she's not really divorced, and deny. And when her husband says, "Hey, you're not divorced," she can say, "No, you divorced me." Did I say it reverse before? I might have said it wrong. I'm trying to remember what I said before. He says, "You divorced me already." She can lie. She can contradict him. Husband shows up, right? There's a report. She's divorced or not divorced. Machlokes, right? 2 say one way, 2 say the other way. So we say if she got remarried based on that, she better leave the marriage. You know why? Because we have no way of proving it. The husband comes along and says, "Hey, we're still married." She says, "No, you divorced me." So he can't prove it. In the case of death, she can't contradict the husband. The husband says, "I'm here." She can't say you're dead. So she'll check it more carefully. In the case of Gerushin, she'll have the chutzpah to say, "No, you divorced me already." So therefore, we don't allow her to get remarried. And if she does, she has to leave it. It says, "How can she be so arrogant to deny the husband?" The husband says, "We're married," and she says, "No, you divorced me." She doesn't have a proof, obviously. If her wife says to her husband, "You divorced me," and then she's believed. A chazaka, we have a presumption that she's not going to have the chutzpah to lie and say, "You divorced me," when he did not. So you see, a person doesn't have such a chutzpah. A woman have such a chutzpah. Like Adam and Messiah. That's when there's no proof and there's no Adam. But over here we're talking about 2 Adam say she was divorced, 2 Adam say she wasn't divorced. So even if she gets remarried now and the husband shows up and says, "Hey, we're still married," the husband's still married, she'll have the chutzpah to say, "No, you divorced me. In fact, there's 2 Adam who agreed with me." Then she will have the chutzpah.
It's not her husband anymore, so she has. She
Yeah,
can have the chutzpah because she's not.
Yeah, but we're talking about in a case where if indeed she is still, if they're really 2 people say she wasn't divorced, they know that she wasn't divorced. If that's really the case, she's not allowed to get remarried. That's why we don't allow her to get remarried. And if she does, she has to leave it because of the concern that maybe she's still married. Her husband, right? Her husband might show up. Why would she lie about that? Because she can lie to her husband. Her husband says, "We're still married. I never divorced you." And she says, "No, I got two Adam who said we are divorced." So she would have the chutzpah to lie. The Messiah means if she would have the chutzpah to lie. And therefore, that's the difference between Mesa and Gershon, but it's two against her. Going to Amri Adam, Achshav Mace. You know what's going on over here? The reason why we believe, why we allow her to stay married, if she remarried based on the testimony of the two who said he's divorced, but we don't allow her to get remarried in the case of the two who said she's divorced when it's 2 against 2. He says, Achshav Mace, Achshav Gershon. It happened right now. Misa, like the Lebrua. When it comes to Misa, you can't prove it. They say, two Adams say, we saw your husband drown. Two Adams say he didn't drown. So people say he drowned. So there's no way to be Mabar one way or another. You can't prove it one way. Like Lebrua, Mamatava Bayam, or a lion ate him up. We can't be Mabar. She shouldn't get married. But if she did, and when she said, "Well, I'm sure because I married one of the Adam," like we said before, she married one of the Adam, and she's sure that she trusts him that he's telling the truth. But Gerushin, by Gerushin, why should you allow her? Two Adam come and say she just got divorced. Two Adam say she didn't get divorced. We say she shouldn't get married, and if she does, she should leave. You know why? Because she just got divorced. Where's the get? Gerushin, like the Ruah, Darminallah, Imisa, if it's really true that you got divorced, obviously look at where's your get? If you say you divorced, a year ago, I lost the get. I have no proof. When you just got divorced, you couldn't lose it that quickly. The Bishat the Portalo Memla, she can't say I lost my get. That's the difference between Gittin and Kedushin. So again, Abaya says it's 1 against 1. And then Rava says it's 2 against 2, but there's a difference between Misa and Gittin, because Gittin she'll have the chutzpah to lie to her husband. But when it comes to Misa, she can't lie to her husband. So therefore, if she gets remarried, we trust that she checked things carefully. And Rav Asi gave a different reasons, because speaking about where she says you just died now or you just divorced now. So in the case of divorce now, show your get. Talk about Shnaimam. Let's say 2 people say she got engaged. Shnaimam lo niskadsha. What are we talking about? A woman who wasn't married until now. 2 people say she just got engaged. 2 people say she didn't. Now, she shouldn't get married to somebody else. Then this is what Tate say. But if she got married to somebody else, she shouldn't leave the marriage, because the chazaka was before, presumably, that she wasn't married. Okay, that's the case we've been talking about. 2 people say she's not divorced. This is Tate, like Rabbi Yochanan said, if she got married, she has to leave. Ma'ishna Reisha, Ma'ishna Sefer, the top of Chav Gimel. What's the in the Reisha and the Sefer? In the Reisha, we say if 2 people say she was gay, she was betrothed, and 2 people say not. If she tries to get remarried, she doesn't have to leave the second marriage. But in the Sefer, in case of Gerushin, she must leave the marriage. What's the difference between the Sefer? We explained already the difference between the case of Misa and get. We're talking about leaving the marriage. What's the difference over here between being betrothed and not? So Abaya says the same thing we saw before in Abaya. Amar Abaya, Tagma Be'ed Echad. 1-8. 8 Echad, I'm Niskasha, 8 Echad, I'm Niskasha. 1-8 says she is betrothed, 1 says not. Tavaya Bapilikum said they're both testifying about a woman who was single, right? We said she got engaged for the first time. She was there last week, she was single. 1 says she's engaged, 1 says she's not. The one who says she got engaged, they're both saying there was a single girl. She was a single girl. Now the one who says she got engaged is 1 against 2, because 2 people said she was single, and 1 person says she's married. She got engaged now. So however, to keep people from talking, better to make sure first that she shouldn't get married to somebody else. But if she did, she doesn't have to leave the marriage. Seifa, in the Seifa, like Abaya said before. 1 says she's divorced, 1 she's not. They're both talking. They're both saying she was married yesterday. The one who says Skarsha is 1. And therefore, 1 is not believed against the other 2, meaning that both said she was married. And therefore, if she got remarried based on that, she has to leave the marriage. That's all Abaya's answer. Rav Ashi Amar Trey, it is 2 and 2. The Apech, I'm going to turn it around. I'll explain the case slightly differently. In the case where 2 people say she was engaged, 2 people say she didn't engage, what were their exact words? Not that she wasn't engaged. 2 people say we saw her we were at the wedding, we saw her get engaged. We didn't see her get engaged. She shouldn't get married to somebody else, to a third person. And this is Tatesei. If she got married, this is Tatesei. Why? because two people said we saw her get married, and two people say we didn't see any marriage. We didn't see any marriage is not proof that she didn't get engaged. All you have really is two people say she got engaged. Shita, Lorena, ain't a raya. That we didn't see her get engaged just means we weren't invited to the wedding. That doesn't prove that she wasn't engaged. Lorena ain't a raya. So let's read it. They live in the same chutzner with them. Mao the same. I might say Imis and Askacha had she got engaged. Kolisle, we would have Kolisle. There would have been rumors about it. There would have been talk about it, and therefore we would have known about it. And since we didn't hear about it, it's a proof that she's not engaged. Sometimes you could live in the same cluster, but they get engaged. They have a small wedding reception in the house, and you didn't know about it. As you might say that it's like if we didn't hear that she got engaged and we're in the same cluster, it's proof that she didn't get engaged. No, that's the point. And that's why all you have over here is two Adam saying she was engaged. Two Adam saying she's engaged. She can't marry a third person, and if she does, she has to leave for the wedding. Seifa, the Seifa of a Gerushin, two people say we saw her get divorced. Two people say we didn't see her get divorced. We didn't see her. She shouldn't get remarried. Then this is what they say. She shouldn't. In this, she shouldn't leave the wedding. Now, why shouldn't she leave the wedding? Why should it's 2 against 2? Micah Mashmalan, because two people say that she was divorced, and two people say we didn't see the divorce. So the two people who said we saw the divorce, you believe them, and she therefore if she gets remarried, she doesn't have to leave the marriage because there's no evidence that she didn't get divorced. The two guys who say didn't say she didn't get divorced, but we didn't see the divorce. They weren't there. So what's the chiddush in that? In this lotates Mike Mashman, even though they live in the chutzner and they didn't hear about it, even though they live in the same chutzner, they didn't hear about it. That's no proof because he do it b'tzena. Hanuach, that's the same thing as kedusha we said before. You saw that in the Reisha. Mao the same agabi kedusha that they didn't make. Sometimes people get married b'tzena. They don't want people to know about the wedding. They didn't invite them or whatever. When it comes to divorce, if she would have been divorced, call it Slayla Milsa. We would have heard about it. People would have talked about it. Kamash Malan, people sometimes the Makdishi with the Megarshi Bitsina. Sometimes people get both engaged and divorced Bitsina. So this is the way Rav Ashi is explaining, it's really a weird case. It's not really 2 against 2. It's two people say she got engaged, right? And therefore she can't get married to a third person. What about the two people say she didn't get engaged? No, they just say we weren't at the wedding, so we don't know. That doesn't mean anything. Pardon?
Where are they coming to? Aid is on.
Oh, they're saying we didn't see the wedding. We didn't see the wedding. Oh, what are you speaking about? We saying that we were in the same neighborhood, we were in the same chatzer, and we didn't hear about any wedding. So apparently she didn't get married. So she says, no, the fact that you didn't hear about it doesn't mean anything. Maybe they got married in the room and you weren't there. The same thing with the Gerushin. You might think it's only by Kedushin, but by Gerushin, everybody knows about it. They're all talking about the Year who got divorced. So you can't prove much. So that's a weird case because it's not really 2 against 2. It's two people saying she was married or two people saying she was divorced, but there's no counter argument. They're not saying two people, no, she didn't get divorced. We were with them together when they were married and we never left them and we know she didn't get divorced. They're not saying that. We didn't hear about the divorce. That's not the same as she didn't get divorced. But in the case of 2 against 2, in the case of divorce we had before, 2 people say she was divorced, 2 people say she didn't get divorced. Not only shouldn't she get married, but according to Rabbi Yochanan and according to the later Brisa, if she does get married now, she gets remarried now, she must leave that wedding because 2 people say she's not divorced. How could she get married to the third guy to actually get married to somebody else now? You'll say, well, she has confidence. Well, no, because if her husband shows up now, she could say we're divorced, and she'll have the chutzpah to argue that because she has 2 Adam on her side. But in the case of Misa, like the first Brisa said, and like Rabbi Yochanan said, not Rabbi Yochanan said, Shaimer Meis, Shaimer Lo Meis, this is Lo Teitze. In the case of death, whether it's 1 8 or 2 8, if Adam said he died, she can get remarried based on that. Because if it's one guy, we believe 2 against 1, like Abaya said, he has the equivalent of 2. And even if you say it's 2 against 2, it's different in the case of Misa. She's not going to want to get remarried. He knows it's 2 against 2. She's not going to get remarried unless she knows for sure he died. Because if he shows up, what's he going to do? I got remarried. I'm a sota. We're in trouble, right? We were married. You didn't die. And I got married in between to somebody else. So there, we allow her to get, if she's not supposed to get remarried until you settle the issue, 2 against 2. But if she got remarried, we don't force her out of that wedding, because the odds are she checked carefully and he's not going to, and he really did die, and therefore he won't show up again. All right, we'll pick up here tomorrow, Mitzvah Shem. Tomorrow's Rosh Chodesh. We'll pick it up in the middle of the page there. Have a good day.